All right, I'm back for part 2. I actually already did all this, and I didn't have my phone on Do Not Disturb, and so a call silently came in, and 20 minutes cut off. So it won't take me 20 to do it this time, so you guys are actually going to enjoy the result of this situation, this failure on my part. So just picking up with this where I was leaving off in the previous video, I talked a little bit about these the Koreans, right? The 200 Koreans who already went through COVID-19. And so basically, and I'm not too sure if I got everything I wanted out in that first one, but the thing that was interesting here, so the World Health Organization sees these guys as basically being reinfected because they're testing positive PCR, and the reality is it's a small amount of viral DNA that's still sloughing off. So later they come out and they correct it and identify that, you know what, these Koreans actually weren't reinfected, but because the PCR test magnifies DNA at such a great level, they were literally just still showing some DNA remnant, and that is what we were picking up. So it's not reinfection, they still have immunity, and they're not going to get reinfected again. So, I mean, yeah, of course, that's what we understand. Anything else, we're just kind of, we're making up crazy hypotheses to fit whatever we think is an appropriate discussion for today. You know, what is our narrative, right? All right, then the last thing, and again, this article, I'm going to post it, you got to read it. The guy is just great article, and it's all just scientific intelligence. It's not, he's not grasping at any straws anywhere in this article, I would say. So this is just, I love this piece, and we kind of touched on it in that previous video, but the extremely long incubation time of 2 to 14 days, and some reports up to 22 to 27 days, should wake up any immunologist already, because that is an extremely long incubation period. Does that not seem as though perhaps there is immunity that's present, keeping this at bay for some period of time as it works its way into full symptoms? And so in that case, that individual would not be contagious. You can't be contagious until you have some level of symptom that causes you to slough off virus in a droplet, in your mucus. You know, that's what it really has to come down to. So until that virus makes it through the antibodies that are trying to stop that infection, right? So that's our first step. And it gets into the cells, now replicates in mucus, now it's transmissible, now it's contagious. So now the person's contagious. So, and then in some cases, patients no longer secreting virus after 5 days. Like that too is a very interesting sign of immunity. There's immunity present in that individual. So a base immunity that contorts the events compared to an expected cycle. That's his word. So basically what you're seeing then with these kind of all over the board numbers as far as how long does it take to kind of get to this point of actually having infection? How quick do some people get over it? Some people take forever. What's that difference when you get into a healthy population? That difference is base level immunity that is contorting the events compared to an expected cycle. So just brilliant stuff, and all of it really just accepted. I mean, really, that's accepted science. He's not stretching for any of it, so great. So, all right, you guys gave me some things to talk about. I want to talk about these. The kids going back to school. So, you know, we're kind of right back where we just were. The fact, so that early, you know, ability to kind of fight off infection with antibodies, your antibody titer is much better as a child than it is as an adult. It just goes down over time. So that's that first step. T killer cells, there's also immunity there, meaning there's memory in T killer cells, white blood cells, to what you've been infected by and what you can kill as well. So with kids, though, because the AB titers or the NAB titers are so high, they can neutralize very well. It only makes sense, given what we understand about asymptomatic spread or the lack thereof, no proof whatsoever, and that kids then would be contagious, or they have the ability to spread once they actually have symptoms. Then it would say to me that kids should go back to school, they shouldn't wear a mask. If they have a symptom of any type whatsoever, they should stay home. Because again, if I'm making health decisions for me and they aren't going to affect you, you don't have a say in my health decisions. The moment they affect you, then I understand you want to say. I'm not going to drive 190 miles an hour and expect you to accept that, because that's a health decision for you, right? If you're on the road, I've just put your entire life at risk. However, if I'm looking at, a mask on an asymptomatic individual, you're making me wear a mask, and I don't have any chance of spreading this to you. None. So that tells me that you don't have a right in telling me what to do. If I have a cough, given the current state of affairs, then the onus is on myself to stay home, or at the very least put a mask on. That makes all the sense in the world. I'm not like anti-mask. No. I'm masked so I can go out and actually, get my mail or go do something when I have a cough. When I have a sore throat. So, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, she says, I'm positive, right? I'm asymptomatic. All I had was a headache and a sore throat. Duh. Those are symptoms. You didn't actually describe asymptomatic when you said that. So, but your sore throat that you called asymptomatic is potentially caused by a mucus drip, right? And so, as we understand, once the virus enters the cell, then the cell has the potential to replicate itself, or the virus has the potential to replicate itself into the mucus that's being produced by your cells. So now you're excreting it. So now, even though, well, I'm not coughing, I just have a sore throat. Who's had a sore throat? When you have a sore throat, is there not some point of tickle and you cough? And maybe it's dry, not productive. So, okay, so not too contagious, but if you identify that, whatever was expelled in the cough, was there any sputum visible, if we put this under an electron microscope? Of course there was. So that is the point at which, that person could cause spread. Just, that should be the education. All this other BS shouldn't be the education. The education should be, at the point of any symptom whatsoever, let's just assume that you're, infected with COVID. I mean, I honestly think this was done so wrong. Early on, I said shelter the weak, and I said put the others out in the world so we can get it and get herd immunity, which is a true, capable thing with this through all scientific data. Anything else is non-scientific dribble. It's a hypothesis based on nothing. So that's what drives me nuts. All right, so kids should go back to school. Absolutely, kids should be going back to school. You want kids to get it, and you want herd immunity, and you want it now so grandma can get out of her shell, right? All right. And now I've got people that I know who've had it, and a decent number. And at this point, even the spread amongst their families has been insignificant to almost zero. So this is not as contagious as you thought. It's that people thought that their symptoms didn't matter. I'm asymptomatic, my symptoms don't matter, whatever, who knows. That's what it was. So, okay. Forced masks, that's a question that Denise asked me. Can you force masks? I think if you're a store, you can force masks. I think if I'm in an office, I could force masks. And I could say, I'm sorry, you can't come in without a mask. And you could say, oh, but I have a health condition. And I'd say, okay, so you have a health condition that makes it so you can't wear a mask. And you'd say, yes. I'd say, okay, then obviously I'm not going to force you to wear a mask, but you can't come in. Simple as that. And I believe that's completely within the right of a private store. Now, for a government to mandate that you wear a mask in public, I don't think that that's actually legally enforceable by most states right now. I read New York's entire pages and pages and pages of their epidemic preparedness plan, or their health emergency preparedness plan. And in the end, it looked like the only powers I could see, and they weren't governor's powers, but the governor could definitely elicit them through the head of of public health, whatever that person's title was per state. Every state could be different, right? Depending on what their state constitution is, their charter. So what I saw though in New York at the time, and this may have already been changed. I know there's been talk of legislation. there was no ability to quarantine or shelter in place healthy individuals. That just wasn't, they couldn't do that. And there was, with it, there was no mention of forcing face coverings, masks, right? That just wasn't even in there. So if that's changed, then maybe it's changed. I don't think Georgia's has changed at all. Obviously, if you're in Georgia with me, you get, and for you you guys are outside of Georgia, if you hear this, our governor basically just made it, he basically put a mandate that no state or county, or no city or county can actually mandate public use of masks. I'm like, yay, go Governor Kemp. So now, why do I think that's such a big deal? Because I believe that is 100% my choice, my right. My body, my choice, right? You do you, whatever, Oh, it's a public health emergency, you can't do you. Well, to me, it's not a public health emergency. If you've not been listening, I don't believe this at all. Not for a second do I think it's a public health emergency. I think it's a manufactured mess. I still think so. Data. Data tells me, what is it? It's the worst flu we've had in 10 years, 11 years. It's not flu, but it's a virus that is typical for causing common type colds. So in this case, it's a more severe one. All right. Vitamins. So if I got this and was an 80-year-old and suddenly I had symptoms, I'm gonna basically keep myself out of a ventilator no matter what. So just so you know, that's I literally, no matter what means no matter what. I mean that, no matter what. So the moment I started getting symptoms, and if I thought it was this, or maybe it's just if I was 80 and I just got symptoms, I would start doing vitamin C IV drip. And I would go off to a location to do that where I would inform them that I think I might be positive. I'll come in and make sure that I am clean and whatever, right? And I go in and I start doing that. Or if I had to, I'd go to my nurse practitioner upstairs and do it here, and we'd just take care of it, right? So that'd be step one. Now, if, let's say we're just talking about, well, what if you're just like, you got some symptoms and it's your kid and you don't really know, or what should we be doing if we want to protect ourselves? So I tend to think vitamin C is better it's better played in the end. It's better to play that card, the ace in the hole when you need it, because I think the body responds in more of a bump if it comes in as a big jump. So could you be taking vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin A, and K, and zinc, all those right now as just a base number to help you? Yeah, absolutely. And I know most of you guys know that I'm a Juice Plus guy, and just to help you understand that, I believe that the value is in the food, the vegetables and the fruits. That's where the value of your immune system function comes from. I call that the building blocks. And then ultimately, where I believe the harmony of an immune system comes from, it's both constant bombardment, and therefore, if you use it, it grows. If you don't use it, you lose it. That's my belief. So that's why I tend to like to go into the world no matter what. And then the other thing too is that I look at it from a top-down brainstem functional control, and that's actually why I'm in the chiropractic world the way I am, because we've taken care of a ton of people with a compromised immunity, and we work on brainstem atlas relationships to look for white blood cell increases, which are actually T killer cell counts, and they actually happen through these polymorphonuclear neutrophils first. So I know I'm getting a little bit sidetracked, but that actually is something, and we've studied that, we've tested that, we've seen numbers come up from people who are getting specific adjustments on the atlas. So in my world, so I tell everyone, get your atlas adjusted by someone who understands the relationship between the atlas and the brainstem and your immuno potential. So it's just a little bit different. So those are key. But then, so someone gets symptoms, my ready plan for anyone, you come in, you're like, oh, I'm sick. We have a little piece of paper, we hand it across the desk to you, and it says 10,000 milligrams of vitamin C divided up by 1,000 an hour for 10 hours a day. That's how I do it. 30,000 units of vitamin D can be done in 3 10,000 unit doses, so you can put more at one time of vitamin D because it's a fat soluble, not water soluble vitamin, so you won't just pee it all out. Where vitamin C, if you put too much at once, you just pee it all out. So 1,000 milligrams every hour on the hour for 10 hours a day. That's a great way to do it. That's like me as an adult, 140 pounds, I'd say the same thing. 100 pounds, 90 pounds, I would cut that down to maybe 80% of that number. 60 pounds, I'd cut it down to about 50% of that number. 20 to 30 pounds, I'd cut it down to like 25% of that number. So That's vitamin A vitamin C and vitamin D are the only ones I really have a set dose. The others I'm like, yeah, just kind of recommended for a supplement that's designed to help your immune system. But I typically only do that when the symptoms are present. So, okay, on a Juice Plus standpoint, I believe that diminishing returns or diminishing value happens with vitamins and minerals, basically nutrition from fruits and vegetables, after roughly 14 servings a day, so 14 open hands a day. To me, from what I've seen in research, I think that you actually are still improving the function of your body up to 14 in a day. So past that, it's a pretty significant drop off, in the return of value to you. So I'm like, yeah, 14 for me is my goal. So I supplement at the end of the day by saying, what did I eat today, and what do I need to bring me up to 14? That's how I do that with Juice Plus. So just, and there's ways that you could do the other supplements. I'm not trying to sell you or peddle stuff to you. I just think that that's important. So especially now, I'm more diligent than ever because I would like I know I've been exposed to people who have been tested positive later, and at this point, I'd like to think that in those environments that I'm going to be someone who is always going to just be completely immune immediately and never have any issue whatsoever, and test antibodies. Oh, by the way, so the company I ordered them from, they are now allowed to ship through customs. They still don't have their emergency certificate. They had it pulled away, can't get it back right now. So, but I'm still going to get the tests. So I'm like, whatever. The fact that I ordered them months ago. So I'm going to have those. So pretty soon I'm going to be testing antibodies. Yay. Looking forward to that. All right. And so then the last thing I want to talk about was the vaccines. Verity asked me to discuss vaccine. And as many of you know who follow me, I don't vaccinate my children. I'm not, I don't want to vaccinate myself with anything additional, so that's where I stand. For those of you who are listening, you could call me a science denier or something else. I would hope that by now, if you've paid attention to what I speak on, you realize that even though I'm passionate, I'm not like off the cuff with this stuff. I like to look at data. I like to look at numbers. So my wife, she got pregnant, and that's when I dug into vaccines, was when she got pregnant. This is years ago, of course. And it was actually the first pregnancy which we had twins that ended up both miscarrying. So it was early relative to when my first daughter, Brooke, showed up. So I went out and I set out, and I actually started reading a book that was very pro-vaccine. That was my first book. And I wanted to kind of get a sense of why is someone writing a pro-vaccine book at all when the world just tends to assume you just do them? And it was really in response to some of the people who didn't. And so I read that book, and that book didn't convince me very much that there was sound evidence that said vaccines actually really, really work, even though you'd say, what are you talking about? I mean, we don't see all these other diseases. But trust me when I tell you there's plenty of evidence that suggests that the vaccines didn't have as much to do with the reduction of these diseases as you might assume. You have to dig, though. You got to look. You got to look at actually disease prevalence, where it was showing up, at what rate, death rate. You got to look at where hotspots seem to come from for these things: polio, measles, mumps, rubella, all this stuff, pertussis, et cetera, diphtheria. You got to look at all of that, and you have to look then at when the vaccine was introduced to our society, and that's what's really kind of shocking and telling. So. All right, I didn't want to get into that too much. I just want to share with you that that's kind of what moved me along this path. So now I'm extremely wary of any vaccine. Just always wary, wary, wary. But I also, because I am on the side of creation and God, which again, call me a science denier. I don't think I am by any stretch. I think that my belief in God is actually because of my pursuit of trying to understand the science of the body. So that's my God belief went up because of that. So I would say, though, that I look at it, and even if you're an evolutionist, I think you probably kind of think that there's some level of sanctity to the human blood and the human cell DNA, right? Like there's something just kind of special about that over the rest of the animal kingdom that maybe we should protect. So I'm very wary of anything that goes directly into the bloodstream. And I'm very wary of anything that's designed through electrophoresis, meaning electric shock to the cell membrane to open it up to receive a new bit of code in the DNA. I don't want to be anywhere near the front line of that. And so for that reason, I am really like double thumbs down on this fast tracking vaccine mentality, especially for like an RNA vaccine. I'm just like, no freaking way. I just think it's crazy. So then on just a regular vaccine, the way that we've done them, in the past, where it's dependent upon an antibody titer, which, basically, if you tell me that herd immunity can't happen, then I hope you get that vaccines can't work. At least not the antibody vaccine, the typical vaccines that we do, because there's no way for that to work if you're not getting an antibody response. It's just how they work. It's what they do, and that's why you give one, then maybe a booster, and then a booster and a booster, because natural infection creates a significant response, artificial, because you've got, usually it's attenuated virus, it might be attenuated live or dead virus, right, that you're giving someone, so it's just not that strong, so your body doesn't respond as much. So then you give some more, and you give some, those are the boosters, right, to try to get the antibody response up where you can get it. So I just think, it's an interesting thing. If you're all about vaccine, then you should be all about herd immunity. If you're all about RNA vaccine, then you're all about something that we really have no large-scale tests to suggest that this will work quickly, well, completely, et cetera, or without leaving damage. And then the last thing on damage, so if you read about epigenetics, I studied epigenetics for years because it was really intriguing and enticing to me. So basically what that is, it's what controls genes. How does your gene sequence alter and change? And you can change your gene sequence by your lifestyle. Now, it's not a dramatic change. We really call it a phenotype expression change, or it's kind of like you take the wheel and you spin it a little bit. So in changing phenotype expression, that actually alters what you pass down to your kids if you've altered it prior to conception. So for that reason, my wife and I, about a year before we started attempting to conceive child, we changed our lifestyle and got real strict and focused and did all these things to really try to pass down the best genetic code that we could. Because there is plenty of science demonstrating, peer-reviewed science demonstrating how significant of a change you can make through diet and so forth. So, so my point with that is, you inject an RNA vaccine into your child who is going to conceive children in the future, and you just have to understand that if it goes wrong in this child, then it's going to go wrong in their child as well. Like you put it into the DNA, it's going to pass down. So that's an important piece. And will it pass down in female via the egg? Absolutely, there is a great potential that it can. But there is more potential for sure, and not even potential, definitive proof that in the male it will be a bigger deal. So, because you're of course producing new sperm all the time. All right, I think that covers it for my recap, my part 2. All right, thanks so much. I don't think there's anything else I want to share right now, but feel free to blast me, rip me, tell me I'm a fool, and all those things. And on the flip side, please feel free to share this. All right, bye.